This is the single most important concept that all my high net worth clients, they all own more than 5 to 6 properties, and all their loan size is over $3 million. And this single concept has given them peace to keep calm and mortgage on, especially with the 7th interest rate hike that's coming. Or depending on when you're watching this video, the 7th interest rate has already been announced. This concept is called entropy. Now, entropy is a scientific concept. It's a concept that accepts disorder, randomness, and uncertainty. Now, to break it into layman's terms, what entropy means is that whatever we're doing in life, there's always a tendency where entropy comes in that leads towards chaos and disorder. So no matter what you do in life, for example, property investing or buying property or accumulating property, there's always going to be a constant pull towards entropy, no matter what. And it's a principle of nature. Now, to pull this concept a little bit further out so it's more understandable, let's look at the human body. For example, through entropy, for example, aging, our body will deteriorate and will die. Or maybe our car, through entropy, the car will depreciate in value, and obviously through corrosion and rust, it'll be one day broken. Now, it might seem like a simple concept, but it's simple to understand but very hard to apply and accept. By understanding this entropy concept, we start to understand and accept that everything is in chaos and disorder as a default. For example, if I bought a box of jigsaw puzzle, for example, 1,000 pieces, do you think if I got all the pieces and threw them in the air, that these pieces on one go will automatically align to this completed puzzle? No way, except maybe 1 in a trillion billion chances that it will fall aligned to that puzzle piece all in one go. If you build a sandcastle at the beach, do you expect this sandcastle not to disintegrate? Absolutely not, because entropy is at force. Every grain of sand that you built will slowly pull towards entropy to become a pile of mess. Let's apply this to property ownership. Just like that sandcastle example, buying property and owning property is like building a sandcastle. Now, 3 to 4 years ago, or maybe 2 years ago, there was great conditions in terms of building this sandcastle, or hypothetically buying a property. There were low rates, great growth, low repayments, and they were somewhat affordable. But guys, you got to remember, entropy is like the beach and the wind that's sitting on the sideline. Back then, it wasn't that windy. No, the waves were pretty cool and calm. Right now, in windy conditions, there's a slope to this original sandcastle. The property that you have might have declined in value. There are higher rates from the mortgage. The RBA has increased rates again. For those that want to get into the property market, it is somehow no longer affordable. That is just entropy and nature at work. Guys, you got to understand rates goes in cycles. There were low rates before, now we're going to high rates, but it's cyclic. Same like property prices. It'll go up and it'll also go down, but it'll come back up. And when my high net worth clients that have, over $3 million alone and, 6 to 7, 8 properties, they don't cry about it when the interest rate gets jacked up. They also don't cry about it when their property has a slight dip in value, which I call a correction. Because they understand that we as humans are fighting entropy. And the only way to fight entropy is through effort. Because for them, they accept entropy. And they know that, like property purchasing, it's sort of like building a puzzle. It takes effort to piece these puzzles together. Because without effort, for example, if you threw all the pieces in the air, don't expect it without effort to have a completed piece. It won't happen. If you ever build a sandcastle with your kids or by yourself, you'll realize in order to fight entropy, which is a disintegration of this sandcastle, is to, constantly pat it, make sure it's sitting upright, and there's a lot of effort put in to maintain this sandcastle. It's like how they maintain their, 6 to 8 property portfolio. So you might be saying, hey, well, I accept entropy, so what? Well, number one, when you accept entropy and know that's the law of nature, your mindset experiences a paradigm shift. You're no longer afraid of the RBA rate rise because you now hold a positive mindset. All these changes are expected. It's a cycle that we go through. And following with number 2, all that wasted negative worrying that if you didn't understand entropy, that it will result you from worrying. All that energy can now be funneled into productive work. For example, instead of saying, hey, how come this is so unfair? You start asking yourself more productive questions. How do I increase my income? Rather than being in my PAYG job, can I do a side hustle, a side gig? And rather than thinking all short term, like reacting to the RBA rate rises, you start to think ahead, maybe 4 to 5 years ahead. Because this will happen again. So how do I build my cash reserve? How do I make this sandcastle more stronger? That's anti-entropy, which is impossible. But then your brain, or so-called your property brain, will start thinking of more productive questions to ask yourself when you buy a property. But by accepting entropy exists, you start to think of ways to combat entropy. For example, you start asking yourself questions. For example, the property you bought in that suburb, what is the property cycle time frame of when it will peak and when it will dip? What does the rate cycle of my interest rate look like? Am I in the high or am I in the low peak? I can safely bet 80 to 90% of you would be like, I don't know. And that's no fault to you. It's just that your mindset is in the wrong direction. You think property is supposed to be going up, or rates shouldn't go up. Like, how dare they? But guys, all my high net worth clients do not think like that. So jump in the comments, let me know what you think. Remember, to be a serious investor, you gotta think like a serious investor.